We're in the middle of a cattle industry around here in Western Queensland, and because the land out here is so marginal anyway, it doesn't take a lot to interfere with the ecosystem and it to be degraded. Removing the cattle, and we're trying to remove the camels as well, and the cats and the foxes. Hopefully over a series of years and seasons it'll come back to a true piece of desert.
It's a real buzz to go out there and see the uni mob out there checking all the grids and checking the traps, and you hear the excitement in their voice when they find a little mulgara or something, or a little spinifex hopping mouth. And the radio waves just become alive. I've got one, I've got one.
What you see and what you're working towards, they can then give you some results of what they've seen. You think, oh, that's good, they've seen so many mulgaras this last month and they've seen so many of those. So you get direct feedback and it's inspiring. You think, yeah, we're on the right track, this is worth doing.
Realistically, there's a good 75% of the population that haven't a clue what's out here. So it would be nice to be able to introduce them to what we've got out here.
Yeah, it'd be good for them to realise just a bit of, what's available, what's around, why it's so important. And if you consider the bigger part of Australia is the red centre, it's huge compared to the little nice green strip around the edge. They need to say, well, let's take a bigger interest in it, and we need to look after it.
You often hear people say, what do I want to go in the desert for? It's just sand and more sand. But we can go for a 60-kilometre drive west on our property, and every sand dune is different. So we see something different on every dune top, and there's just so much out here to see. So we've got to try and tap into that 75% of the population and get them out here.
I mean, we've got the biggest diversity in reptiles in any desert region in the world. That's something worth boasting about.
My favourite time is when the rain stops and the next 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, because all the frogs come up out of the ground and the noise is just amazing with all the frogs.
Yeah.
So with so many frogs on the ground, you've got all the birds coming in, and then you've got the grasses growing, and the trees seem to just jump out of the ground.
Yeah, everything freshens up. Yeah. It's easy to breathe because the dust's dropped out of the air. It's a nice clear sky. And your nights are a little bit cooler too, so it's a little bit easier to live.
Yeah. And what's really nice on this property is we're in the heart of grazing country, and we're surrounded by cattle properties. When a new shoot comes up off a tree or a piece of grass comes up, a cow chomps it off straight away. Here we get to keep ours and we can actually see what's happening, and it's just amazing. And each year you can just see the difference out there. I'm talking gidgee tree at the moment, and our gidgee trees have been trampled on for the last 20-25 years by cattle. Well, once the cattle were taken off here, they're just jumping out of the ground. There's one drawback, isn't there?
Flies!
As soon as we get the rain, we get the flies.
Yeah, flies. Lots of flies. They don't give you any peace. You'll start very early. You'll load your car with everything from emergency water, emergency food, fuel, GPS, recovery gear, all your tools and equipment, and you'll head out the tracks to, say, do some repairs to fences and check up on a bore, check some tracks, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You'll be out there for most of the day, and then you'll head back.
You become in tune with your environment, and then all of a sudden, if there's something different, like an aeroplane flying overhead, and we don't get many of those, but all of a sudden, what's that? We have to maintain some sort of relationship with the community. As we've said several times, we're in the heart of cattle country. Most cattle people...
Yeah, we're still looked on as greenies.
Yeah, especially neighbours, they're a little bit sort of cautious about
suspicious
conservation groups on their boundary. So we've just got to make them aware that we're human beings, we're ordinary people.
It's improving.
Yeah, definitely improving.
It's if you compare it to, say, the 50s or 60s, where it was a case of put on as many cattle as you can and just pillage the countryside, it's not like that anymore. Current cattle stations are much better at resting paddocks and taking notice of what's in the environment, because that's how they make their money. And they're actually quite good at it nowadays, but they still view a conservation group that close to them as I won't say a threat, but a bit of a...
But there's this perceived thought that greenies chain themselves to bulldozers and have got long resto here and that sort of thing, and it's so old-fashioned, that line of thought, but let's face it, they still think that out here. And, the cattle people think this whole country is theirs, and they a little bit bemused why somebody wants to come out here and conserve it and not put cows on it, because this is cattle country. Well, in the year and a half we've been here, we've learned that this is so marginal cattle country. I'm surprised they put cattle on here in the first place, but there are pockets of this country that do hold large areas of Mitchell grass, which is very palatable to the cattle, and those properties that have that sort of grass, right, they're fine, but we have so little of it here. I was so surprised it was ever grazed. I remember a property nearby came up on the market 6 months ago, and I gathered some information about this property and when it was coming up for auction and sent it all down to Melbourne, and I happened to mention it to a neighbour, and that neighbour said to me, "Oh, why do you guys want that property? That's good cattle country, it's just going to go to waste if you guys get it." So there is that line of thought amongst these guys, and I know they talk amongst themselves, we don't want Bush Heritage to have that property, so I hope somebody else gets it, so to speak. To see a property the way it's been denuded and run down and basically just looks like a lunar landscape, to see the improvement that we've done here in the short time we were here, and to the credit of the previous manager, that's a real buzz to me, and if we can maintain that level of reproduction of our land here, I think we're kicking goals.
If you can conserve a little chunk of it, that's crucial, because hopefully that can be passed on to somebody else and they can see, well, this is how a little piece of desert is without the interference of feral animals or whatever. So it's well worth it.
We do have to put property aside. You know, I think we've got the highest extinction rate of any country in the world, Australia. And we've got to start putting these little blocks of land aside.
Yeah. There's got to be pockets of all sorts of environment that we look after, so that we've got a chance of keeping what should be there. For other generations to see.
That's what will happen here. I don't think we'll ever be engaged in introducing endangered species onto this property because of its boom and bust times. But what we've got here we must try and preserve.
Yeah, it's worth looking after. It's special.